Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something many of us might face. How do you handle health stuff while trying to keep your work life going? We're taking a deep dive into vocational rehabilitation. We got some really interesting sources here, and we want to give you a shortcut to understanding what it's all about and why it matters.
Absolutely. Our goal for you today really is to explore how a more, let's say, holistic approach can help people stay in their jobs, get back to work after being off, and crucially, remain there. And this isn't just theory, right? It's about real strategies that help, well, everyone, the person, their employer. It helps build healthier workplaces overall.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Vocational rehabilitation. The definition we found is pretty straightforward. Whatever helps someone with a health problem to stay at, return to, and remain in work. Simple enough.
It sounds simple, but behind that definition is something quite, well, counterintuitive, actually. The big insight is that work itself can be like medicine.
Work is medicine. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Expand on that.
Yeah, it's not just about the money, There's solid research suggesting work is fundamentally good for your health. There was a major UK report back in 2006 from the Department for Work and Pensions. Is work good for your health and well-being? Was the title. And it found that generally work makes people healthier. It actually helps people recover from health conditions, and it improves health for those getting back into work after unemployment. It's a powerful thing.
Wow. So it really goes beyond just the paycheck.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that must be pretty stark, too. You mentioned the risks of not working. What did the sources say about that?
Oh, definitely. It's quite sobering, actually. People who are long-term unemployed, there's something like 2 to 3 times more likely to have poor health. And get this, people are twice as likely to experience psychological distress after losing their job, going from work to unemployment.
Twice as likely.
But here's the stat that really grabbed my attention. Someone off work sick for 6 months has an 80% chance of being off for 5 years.
80%. After just 6 months. That's huge.
It is. Just 6 months can drastically increase the odds of being out of the workforce long term. Think about the implications of that.
Yeah, what does a statistic like that really mean for, employers and just society generally?
Well, it really highlights why effective vocational rehab is such a win-win. For employers, you're looking at less absence, better productivity, lower staff turnover. You keep experienced people, saving on hiring and training. Plus, it boosts the company's reputation.
Makes sense. And for the worker?
The benefits are clear. Better physical health, often because the job demands are managed properly. Better mental health, too, self-esteem, social connection, that kind of thing. And, of course, more financial security. It really is a situation where investing in employee health pays off for everyone involved.
Okay, so if work is that important for health and being out of work carries these big risks, how do we actually build a system that supports people effectively? Our sources point to this key framework, the biopsychosocial model. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. This came from George Engel back in 1977, and he was really pushing back against the purely medical view of health, the idea that you just treat the disease. Engel argued that our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, they all massively influence our physical state.
Okay, so biopsychosocial. What are the core parts?
Exactly. So 3 interconnected things. First, biological. That's the physical condition itself, or maybe a mental health condition, like, say, a back injury or anxiety. Straightforward enough.
Right.
Then psychological. And this isn't just about diagnosed mental illness. It's more about personal factors, beliefs, how someone copes, their emotions, distress levels. Think about personality or how resilient someone is, or even like an asthmatic knowing how and when to use their inhaler. It's how we think and feel about our situation and our ability to manage it.
Got it. Mindset and coping. And the third part?
That's social. This looks at the wider context, the person's culture, the workplace culture, society's attitudes, social interactions, things like responsibilities at home, financial pressures, support from colleagues or lack of it. All that external stuff matters.
So it really is a holistic view, isn't it? It's saying the health condition itself is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to work.
Precisely. And it's pretty widely accepted now. It actually forms the basis for the WHO's, the World Health Organization's classification system for functioning and disability. And we know it works in practice. It's been used successfully in rehab for things like musculoskeletal problems, back pain, joint issues. So it has real-world application.
Okay, so moving from the why and the sort of underlying model,
yeah.
What does this look like on the ground? What can organizations actually do proactively? The sources really stress the idea of reasonable adjustments.
Yeah, and first, it helps to understand what counts as a disability or impairment in this context. It's basically a physical or mental condition that has a substantial, long-term negative effect on someone's ability to do normal daily tasks. And that covers a huge range, doesn't it? Sensory issues, conditions that fluctuate like epilepsy, progressive ones, autoimmune disorders, organ-specific things like asthma, also developmental disorders, learning disabilities, mental health conditions, injuries, a really broad spectrum.
These can affect work in so many ways.
Mhm.
Mobility, dexterity, concentration, memory, speech.
Exactly, which is why these reasonable adjustments are so key.
So what are some concrete examples? What does reasonable actually mean in practice? Sometimes that word can feel a bit vague.
It often comes down to quite practical, sometimes surprisingly simple things. The sources mention stuff like buying specialist gear, an ergonomic chair for someone with back pain, maybe,
Hmm.
or allowing flexible start and finish times for appointments, maybe providing extra supervision or guidance for a bit. Wheelchair access is a common one. Or even just providing recruitment info in large print for someone with a visual impairment, allowing guide dogs in the workplace. The reasonable part is objective, though. Like, putting in a temporary ramp might be reasonable. A huge, expensive structural change to an old building. Maybe not, depending on the circumstances. It's about what's proportionate.
Right, proportionate. And what's really interesting is the emphasis on employers being proactive, isn't it?
Hmm.
Not just waiting to be asked.
Yes, absolutely. Best practice is anticipating needs. There are moral reasons, legal ones like the Equality Act 2010 in the UK, but similar laws exist elsewhere and financial reasons too. It's about taking sensible steps before problems arise.
And that proactive approach leads neatly into another point, pre-placement health assessments.
Exactly. These are part of the risk assessment process for a new hire. And, crucially, they usually happen after a job offer is made. That's an important distinction.
Right, not as a barrier to getting the offer. So what do they involve?
It could be a questionnaire just to screen for potential issues related to the job's demands, or sometimes, if needed, a proper medical examination. And the benefits are really significant. They check if the person is medically fit for the core tasks of the job. They spot early chances for those reasonable adjustments we talked about. They also assess if the job itself might negatively affect the person's health. And they provide a baseline health record, like a hearing test, before starting a noisy job. It just sets everyone up for success.
Okay, so we have these proactive steps, but what happens when someone does need time off sick? How does all this apply to managing absences? We saw that the UK's NICE guidelines, NG 146, offer a good structure here.
Yes, they break it down quite usefully. First, there's short-term frequent absence. That's usually defined as less than 4 weeks at a time, but happening repeatedly. This can be really disruptive, can't it? Especially for smaller businesses, SMEs.
Definitely.
And the research suggests the single most effective thing employers can do here is consistently conduct return-to-work interviews.
Not just ticking a box then.
No, not at all. They're a chance to understand the reasons, discuss any underlying issues, and figure out what support might be needed. It's a conversation. Lots of places also use trigger mechanisms. You mentioned the Bradford factor earlier. That's a formula that flags up patterns, like lots of short absences, or maybe absences always falling on a Monday or Friday.
Ah, okay. Identifying patterns.
Exactly. It helps managers apply absence policies fairly and consistently. And getting occupational health involved early can make a big difference too.
Right, so that covers the short, frequent stuff. What about longer absences?
Long-term absence, generally defined as over 4 weeks. Now, interestingly, the sources suggest this can sometimes be, well, easier to manage than the frequent short bursts.
Easier, how so?
Because you have more time to plan, you can range cover more effectively, and you have a longer window to think about and plan a structured return-to-work strategy.
Okay, that makes sense. But for both types, it seems like a common thread is maintaining contact and intervening early. That sounds crucial, but maybe tricky to get right, especially if someone's really unwell.
It is vital, and yes, it needs sensitivity. For long-term absence, the strategies are pretty comprehensive. It starts with making early, impartial contact. This might be done by HR or occupational health, maybe a union rep, or sometimes even a buddy, a colleague at the same level who can offer informal support.
When should that contact start?
Typically, somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks into the absence. It shouldn't be left too long. And regular contact after that is key. It helps stop the person feeling isolated, keeps them in the loop about work stuff, and sort of normalizes the idea of coming back eventually.
Yeah, I can see how that would help reduce anxiety.
Definitely. Though we have to acknowledge managers sometimes struggle with staying impartial, especially with mental health issues Or perhaps conditions like bipolar disorder, HIV, or cancer, which can unfortunately still carry stigma or make people feel awkward.
That highlights the need for good training and clear policies for managers, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Other practical things include flexibility around pay during absence, maybe using annual leave or flexi-time balances. Sometimes employers might pay for specialist medical assessments, like for complex back problems or hearing tests. And then there's adapting the work itself. This could be temporary or permanent changes, like a phased return, maybe no night shifts for a while, having a buddy system, sometimes even changing roles or making workstation adjustments.
Lots of options there.
And finally, early intervention means making sure employees know about things like employee assistance programs, EAPs. These offer confidential counseling and support, plus other rehab services like physiotherapy. For mental health specifically, a structured support program over about 3 months is often recommended to help prevent relapse.
Okay, let's circle back to that biopsychosocial model for a second. How does using that broader view help identify and, more importantly, overcome the actual real-world barriers people face when trying to return?
It's incredibly useful because it helps categorize the problems, which then helps target the solutions.
Yep.
You can think about barriers in those three buckets. So biological barriers, that's the condition itself, right? The back pain, the anxiety, the fatigue after surgery, the direct physical or mental limitations.
Okay.
Then psychological barriers, this is the internal stuff. Fear, maybe. Fear of making the condition worse by coming back too soon. Worry about what colleagues will think if they can't pull their weight initially. Anxiety about their future career if things don't go smoothly.
Yeah, those are very real anxieties.
Very real. And finally, social barriers. This is the external environment. Can they physically get into the building? Are there suitable toilets? Is their workstation set up correctly? How is the work actually organized? Is there support at home or from colleagues?
Right. So the model helps pinpoint where the problems lie.
Mm.
And how do organizations then tackle these? You mentioned risk assessment earlier.
Exactly. Structured processes like risk assessment are key. But the focus shouldn't just be on the person's health condition in isolation. It needs to look at the demands of the job and figure out how the risks associated with those demands can be managed safely.
So it's about matching the person's capacity to the job requirements with adjustments.
Precisely. And sometimes that involves specific plans, like a personal emergency evacuation plan or PEEP for someone with mobility issues, just to ensure safety in an emergency.
Okay. And achieving all this often requires talking to lots of different people, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Successful outcomes nearly always involve liaison, talking to the person's GP or primary care team, HR, health and safety specialists, occupational health, maybe trainers if skills need updating, mental health teams if relevant, even building maintenance sometimes. Getting everyone on the same page is vital.
It sounds like a team effort. And beyond the internal team, there's help from outside, too. Our sources mentioned external agencies. What kind of support can people typically find? Using UK examples, perhaps, but thinking generally.
That's a great point. There's often a wider support network. You'll usually have your primary healthcare system, like the NHS in the UK, providing medical advice and support for return-to-work planning. Then, government employment services like Job Centre Plus in the UK often have specialist advisors, disability employment advisors who know about employing people with health conditions or disabilities.
Financial hub, too.
Yes, often there are schemes, like the UK's Access to Work program, that provide grants for practical support or equipment needed to overcome work-related obstacles caused by a disability. Things like special software or taxi fares if public transport isn't feasible. Occupational therapists, OTs, are key players globally. They do detailed assessments of both the person and the job and create practical action plans. And many countries have dedicated services, sometimes called Fit for Work or similar, offering impartial advice to employees, employers, and doctors about health and work issues.
So when we bring all these threads together, the model, the adjustments, the absence management, the external support, it feels like it's about more than just having the right policies on paper.
Exactly right. It really boils down to embedding a genuine culture of well-being within the organization.
A culture. What does that look like in practice?
It means making health and well-being a visible core priority. You see it in how managers behave and how they're trained. It's included in inductions for new staff. It's talked about in company communications. It's reflected in basic things, too, like ensuring people have reasonable working hours and take proper breaks. That's fundamental. And crucially, the culture needs to recognize that just because someone is back at their desk, it doesn't mean they're instantly 100% better. The recovery journey often continues and ongoing support might still be needed.
That's a really important point. So that process of assessing fitness for work isn't a one-off thing.
No, it needs to be ongoing. It means continually considering the person's functional capacity, keeping an eye out for any lingering psychological or social barriers, and having a plan to monitor and tweak adjustments as needed. It's about ensuring things continue to work for both the employee and the business. Hashtag tag head outro.
Wow, okay. What a comprehensive look at this. We've really unpacked vocational rehabilitation today, haven't we? From the core idea that work can be healthy, through the biopsychosocial lens, to practical steps like adjustments and absence management and building that whole support system.
We have. And it really shows the potential, the transformative power of getting this right. Which leads us to a final, maybe provocative thought for you, our listener. If we really think about all these benefits for individuals, for companies, for society, what could a truly health-centric workplace actually look like in the future? If these principles weren't just applied, but universally embraced and maybe even innovated on, what other shifts in thinking or policy might unlock even more human potential and resilience at work?
Powerful questions indeed. Something to really think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope you'll reflect on these insights, maybe see how they apply in your own world. Until next time, keep digging deeper.